Swayze. What's going on, everyone? What's going on, everyone, and happy Black History Month. My name is Jovan Page. I'm the chair for Marketing Culture for the Young Alumni Council. Our pillars are ambassadorship, community service, mentorship, and networking. I have the absolute pleasure of introducing someone who's my friend. And I'm actually going to do a little more diving into her introduction because, one, she's not going to do it herself. She's too humble of a person. But two, she deserves it. So not only is this one of my spiritual confidants, one of my close friends, a sister of mine. She was black and gold when we were in undergrad, but more importantly, she's an entrepreneur, she's a philanthropist, and she's someone who identifies with a goal and a purpose of making everyone better. That's one of her goals, is to make everyone better. So I'm super excited to introduce this program and introduce one of my favorite people, Ms. Gabrielle Booth.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much, Joe, for that introduction. I'm so happy to be here tonight. And I'm going to jump right in a little bit about myself. I graduated Georgia State somewhere in that 2014, 2015 range. I graduated with a degree in history and music. And automatically after graduation, began a job teaching, realized I come from a line of teachers, but that was not for me. Jumped into another career field of recruiting. Again, realized that was not for me. And then I realized, as Joe said, my passion is people, helping people to become better, helping everyone to kind of find their passion and then put the action steps towards reaching their goals. And that's when I decided to pursue being an author and to become an entrepreneur. And so today I've written 3 books that you can find on Amazon. And I also am the business and programming strategist for a company called Mountaintop Counseling Services, LLC, founded by myself and my mother. And it is a mental health practice, and we do holistic mental health care. And I write the curriculum, write some of our devotionals, and just really help people become just their all-time best in every area, whether that's in their career, their mental health, their spiritual health. So that's a little bit about me.
So I feel like it's crazy and it's kind of unique that 2 minutes in the program, I already feel inspired. I'm like, yo, we can end the program right here. But I do have a few questions for you, and I think that people want to know. So for you to have navigated so many spaces, I know we were having a conversation, and I'll just go ahead and tell you guys the tea. We were having a conversation before we started the program officially about how few people actually major in the things that they're doing right now. So you mentioned, teaching, you mentioned going into HR, and now you're doing something different. I want you, if you can, to kind of define your post-collegiate journey in 3 words. And in those 3 words, I want you to give us a little insight on why you picked those words.
Yeah, so the first one would be hard. The second one, rewarding. It was very rewarding. I needed every job. I had a lot of different, I only told you about 2 of them, but I did a lot of stuff, using it to learn while I built my entrepreneurship skills and learned how to be a better writer. And I went back to grad school. I did a lot. But anyway, so the first thing was hard, rewarding. And I think the last word would be, it was very interesting. And I say that because I often in the beginning compared myself to my counterparts. And I hated that I didn't pick up something like being a lawyer, being a doctor, things that I felt gives you a direct track to where you're going to go once you graduate. And I remember leaving school, graduation day, saying, I have no idea what I'm going to do, and hating that I felt that way because I'm such a goal-oriented person. When I was in undergrad getting my music and history degree, I was doing music because I was at the time competing in the Miss America pageant world and Miss Black and Gold and all that stuff. And I was winning talent awards. So in my mind, I was like, okay, maybe I could do something in entertainment, be a TV personality, do music, because I was good at it. And then I chose history because I'm a history nerd. And I was like, maybe I'll write historical, books on African American culture. And I just had all these things that I was passionate about, but it didn't lead me towards landing that big job, that we all want when you graduate. And so it took me a little bit of time, and I hated that I couldn't have this straight path. But what I realized, for me, destiny needed me to have all of those experiences so that I could really get to the root of what my purpose is, because there's a difference between the jobs and your life's purpose created to do. And for me, I needed that longer way to get there. It was just necessary. So you asked me 3 words and I went the long way, but that was it.
Yeah, I mean, but that's how life is. Life is sometimes taking a long way. And I know we had an order in some of the questions I sent you, but
Yeah.
I think that's a very perfect segue into navigating to the next one. You mentioned purpose.
Yeah.
How would you define purpose? How would you define passion? If they aren't the same, what would you say the differences are? And then what would you say your passion and your purpose are?
Yeah, so often your passions are things that you love to do. They may not necessarily generate money. They may not necessarily be things that you even show or showcase to others. But passions are important because they kind of give you inspiration, help you use your creativity, and your purpose is often that one thing that you are specially designed to do. Like your life keeps giving you markers of that's what you're called to do. And so for me, a lot of my passions included reading lots of books. I've always been a writer, writing, and speaking. And so my passions kind of were just things that I found myself stumbling into that let me do those things, right? But then when I realized that my purpose was people and helping people to get to where they need to get to in life, I realized that my passions for me helped kind of inform my purpose. And so for me, one of the first things that I did was kind of surrender to the fact that what I'm called to do and what I'm made to do, my story is going to be different from a lot of people getting to that place, that place of success or the pinnacle for me. And it was hard to accept that because I come from a family, 5 children. I'm the oldest, so I'm expected to set a standard. But my siblings were already kind of reaching some of their career pinnacles before I was. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm the example. Like I need to be kind of stepping up, doing more. And I remember talking to a coach one day, and she said, you give a lot you give a lot to the world, not just in writing your self-help, your spiritual self-help books, but you spend a lot of time mentoring people, counseling people. I work in ministry, so you spend a lot of time serving. Do you think that a normal 9 to 5 would give you room to do what your life's work is to do? So stop comparing yourself to people who are excelling in their jobs when what you're made to do, it's not going to fit into that box. And so getting past that discomfort really freed me, and it really allowed me to stop doing the comparison thing and worrying about will I ever make it. And when I finally started doing what I was called to do, I remember the first book that I wrote, I spent maybe $350 to get that book out, to get it printed, do the photo shoot, do all that stuff, right? The first weekend that I released that book, I booked a speaking engagement at an event. There were maybe 150 people there. Brought my box of books in. After I gave my speech, I said, "Now meet me at the table, buy my book." Sold out, made about $3,000 in a day, my first book. And so that's when I realized once you get comfortable in your lane and stop comparing what you're doing to anybody else, that's when you really get that momentum and really see the success that you're looking for. But it took time. It really did. So
Now, that's beautiful. I want to get into the book a little bit, but I'm going to wait on that because
okay.
you mentioned something that I think is really important and pivotal for people to hear. Um, the culture of comparison is something that isn't just with people who you don't know. We talk about living in a microwave generation, how people want things quickly, and how you're constantly compared to people who you don't know. Just because you're scrolling the timeline, you see people who are successful, they're posting their accomplishments. And although we know in our minds that Instagram and Twitter and TikTok and all of these social media platforms are highlight reels, it's still hard to kind of combat that spirit of comparison. But I think it's interesting to acknowledge the fact that sometimes it's not people you don't know. Sometimes it's your family. Sometimes it's the pressure that comes with that. Can you talk a little bit about, what that sort of culture of comparison is and how you've experienced it and then how you navigate it?
Yeah, so I want to start with my parents did a wonderful job raising all their children because we all went to college, all graduated college, all had these expectations of what we needed to do. And one of the things that we actually were taught was not to look at the people on the left and the right, have tunnel vision. So it's not that wasn't instilled or something that I hadn't practiced the entirety of my life, being focused on myself. I've never been the kind of person that, has struggled with being jealous and envious. So when I found myself comparing, I realized that it was because I thought that there was something missing. I thought that there was maybe a lack with me when I started kind of doing the comparison thing. So I wasn't unhappy that people were reaching their success before me. I wasn't jealous or having negative emotions. It was more like, what do I need to do to be doing better? What am I missing that's making me delayed in what I feel like I want to attain? And again, one of the ways that I combated that emotion and that feeling was I said to myself, you have to realize that what you're meant to do, you need this journey. And that's hard. That's hard to accept, that you don't get the map of, okay, in 4 years, you're going to finish this. In 3 years, you're going to have this. Then you're going to be a lawyer. 3 years, you're going to have this. 2 years, you're going to do this. Then you're going to be a doctor, however long the journey is. And so when I realized that often trailblazers don't have a map, and it's uncomfortable. If you're the first person doing something in your family, I come from a line of entrepreneurs, but nobody's done it the way that I've done it. And so when you're the first person to do something, it's hard. And I can be completely honest. There were many days, even as a woman of faith and somebody who's very strong, I'm a fighter. There have been days where I was like, what am I doing? Let me do the regular route. And that's how I ended up doing jobs and HR and recruiting. And I would be like, let me just step back into. Every time I walked into them places, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I regretted day one. You're not supposed to be here. Like, your joy and your happiness is when you're working for yourself and when you're helping people. I can't remember the term. There's like a test you take in some workspaces. And basically when I got back, whatever the result, it's not Enneagram, it's something else that they give you.
Myers-Briggs?
I think that's it. And they break down, like, some people need to do work that is exactly, it directly impacts humans. Like, you need to see that you're directly helping somebody. That's me. I can't do things where I don't see someone's life is not better because we've met. And so once I realized that, I said, I don't care how hard I struggle. I don't care how long it takes. I'm going to do what I need to do, which is, working for myself, writing these books and running my mental health practice. And so once I accepted that, I felt like the freedom was the best feeling I ever felt in the world. So I'll stop there because I keep talking. So
no, look, I mean, this is all about you, but you're dropping some gems and it's actually taking me completely away from what we talked about. So please forgive me. And
okay, that's all right.
You can yell at me later about it. Okay, so as you talked about kind of navigating different spaces, dealing with doubt, I'm interested to know how the pandemic was for you. And I know that's something that, regardless of whether or not some of our listeners are undergraduate students or they're navigating the terrain of being collegiate graduates, they're still trying to either recover or maybe for some people get back to the level of focus that they might have had during the pandemic when everything else shut down. And you didn't have the distractions and the comparisons. How was the pandemic for you professionally? How did you navigate it? And what are some things that either you learned from that or continue to use from those experiences?
That's such a good question. And I'm so happy you actually asked this, because the pandemic for me, to be honest, it was amazing because I was in grad school and it gave me time to think. Because I said, once I get this degree, I have a Master of Divinity, which is like the study of theology. And I really had time to say, what do you want to do when you leave here? Are you going to go back to being scared, find the easy way, get just a regular job somewhere, or are you going to leave here and take some, leaps? And I was committed to coming out of the pandemic, not being afraid. And it was an amazing time. To be honest, it was so great that I actually had a problem readjusting when the world opened because I was in such like a peaceful state. I actually really struggled, and I actually myself went to therapy to kind of figure out how to like get my mind out of the anxiety I felt going back into the fast-paced world. And Joe, you know me, I'm accustomed to being a busy woman. When I was in recruiting, I was traveling, to different states all the time and in front of people all the time. And I love the fast pace of life. So to be in that slowness of the pandemic, to sit and think about my career choices, I almost loved it too much and had to really get reacclimated to the fast pace. And it took a whole year for me to get reacclimated to being busy again like that. But my advice for those who are readjusting to the new economy that we have and their career and things like that after the pandemic is it should have taught us all what was important to us. And what do you want to get out of your life that's delaying you from the life you want to live, and what will progress you. Some of us should have came out well rested. Some of us should have came out with another certification, whatever. And if you didn't, do it now. And one more thing, because it's Black History Month, I want people to talk to people that are older, way older. Find somebody that's 75, 80, 85, 90, because that's what I did. How did you deal with, this economic crisis back in 1955? You know what I'm saying? Like ask those questions. And I heard so many amazing things from our, our those who've lived a lot of life before us. That's what I'll say. And it encouraged me that we think we're so special because we're going through crazy stuff. And they're like, maybe I went through the time where, this crazy thing happened, and it gave me a better perspective for my life. And everybody needs to start talking to the seniors. Please go talk to people. You don't have all the answers. You don't know everything. Go talk to those who have been on this earth way longer, and you'll get some real gems for your life. So,
Yeah, that's facts. I mean, we talk about fashion being cyclical, but so much of history repeats itself, even if it isn't apples to apples. And I think sometimes we try to get too literal and specific about certain things. Like, there wasn't social media in the 80s, so they don't understand. But there's a whole lot of things that they had to navigate that are comparable to what we deal with. Or, I mean, honestly, the things that we deal with pale in comparison because, obviously speaking, even though racism still exists, even though sexism still exists, like a lot of those things aren't as paramount in your face. They exist, right? But it's not as accepted for those to be like widely, broadcasted and accepted. And I feel like sometimes as a younger generation, even for millennials, when you're the middle generation and you've learned something and you have the ability to say, well, I navigated time without a cell phone, and then now, I can do the social media thing. There's still so much we can learn from reaching back. I think that's a really good point. So now that kind of brings me to my next question. During the pandemic, or maybe before, maybe after, a lot of people identify routines that were best for them identifying their mental health, the best ways for them to kind of get zen, or whatever their day-to-day routine looked like. Would you mind a little insight of what that looks like for Gabby? What is your day-to-day to navigate whatever comes your way? Good news, bad news, ups, downs. What does your day-to-day look like?
I love this question. So I think it's really important to find what your body and your mental health needs. And so oftentimes we don't sit with ourselves to listen to what we need. We look at TikTok, get all this advice from Instagram, Facebook. We try to copy other people's formula, but they have a different genetic makeup, different traumas they're overcoming, different spiritual levels. There's so many things that you can't look at someone and try to copy and paste it to yourself. And so my first advice is, even though I'm going to share mine, I really want everyone to sit with yourself and say, what does my soul need? What does my mind need? What does my body need? And so that will help you kind of figure out a game plan of consistency and different ways to really structure your day, to structure your life for success. So the first thing is when I wake up in the morning, something that's so important for me is to meditate. And I use apps. There's so many good meditations. My favorite is the Abide app. And I just really use it for scripture meditation. There's music, there's nature sounds, there's all these things that really help me center my thoughts for the day. And I like to wake up with that being the first thing that kind of sets my day. And then the second thing is I'm very consistent with working out, and I picked that up during the pandemic. Was just realizing how much better I felt doing really great workouts, and so I do that pretty consistently. I'm always posting, on my page. I've taken 234 classes or whatever number I'm on. It is in the 200s, y'all. So I really got to brag about that because I was not a workout girl, but I'm really proud that I've been consistent with that. It's just been wonderful for my mental and physical health. And then another thing is I've learned to really write down everything I need to accomplish in a day, and being able to see those things being checked off as I go through the day, to know that I've accomplished all the major things that need to be done, really helped me to accomplish my goals and to stay focused. And we all know, if you've ever read books from multimillionaires and billionaires and all these successful people who've made history, they all have little habits that keep them structured and keep them in alignment so that they can get things done. So everybody needs to find some type of discipline in their life that gives you a level of, no matter how I feel, I do this particular thing every day. And if you're a person that has trouble getting up in the morning and starting that daily regimen, do one of your favorite things in the morning that helps you to jump up to start your daily regimen. And for me, it started with coffee. I just love a perfect cup of coffee in the morning. I don't like to miss it, or a cup of tea. So I started there, and then, get into the other steps. So that's something that I found has been the perfect formula for me. And even on my worst day, those things really kind of help me to refocus and recenter myself and find some semblance of joy or happiness. But it still promotes my personal success.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I know I mentioned before that I wanted to kind of dig into your authorship. Might
Yeah.
have came up, but we're gonna say that's a word. So
Okay.
we're gonna dive a little bit into your authorship. One book that's actually one of my favorites that I did purchase. Gabby wrote a personal message for me.
Hmm.
That book. So that was Gabby's Guide: Timely Advice from the Unlikely Expert. And
Yeah.
the book you have is Embracing the Unbothered Life. I know you have three books, but between those two, can you talk through what your mindset was for both books?
Yeah.
How did it differ? How did it mirror each other? And then
Mhm.
also, if anyone's interested in writing a book, what were some of those steps that you took?
Excellent. So I kind of talk about Embracing the Unbothered Life. Gabby's Guide was my first book, but Embracing the Unbothered Life I actually wrote during the pandemic and released it towards the end of the pandemic. So that's why I want to talk a little bit about that one. But I realized that although in college I was very lighthearted, easygoing, I'm kind of still that way. But I found that as I kind of got into deep into adulthood, you can become a really stressed out, really overwhelmed type of person if you have certain goals that you want to reach. And I realized that I was very bothered all the time. Everything was bothering me, and I did not want to be that kind of person. I didn't want to be this overly stressed out, because then that means I'm not really being good to myself or to people around me. And so I started really focusing on what will make me the most unbothered. And that's where that book came from, was the steps that helped me to really release being this bothered person. And it started with a conversation with my fiance. One day we were walking and talking on the Beltline, and he was like, "You told me that you was like this real chill person, but I feel like you always got something that you like mad about." Like, you like, "Oh, I'm about to pop out," and I'm like, that's not me. I'm like, that's not really me. I'm really happy. But I was becoming this other person. And so I love that he brought that realization to me. And through the book, I was able to kind of recenter myself to being the more unbothered person and help other people become that way. And one of the things that I talk about is when we release ourselves from the bondage of people, we really release ourselves from a lot of pressure in life. And there's plenty of other steps in there, but that book really helped me. It was me writing to me, and I just let people in on my business, honestly. And so that's where that came from. And so that one was a self-published book. And what I tell people is that based on if you want to be an author, listen to the conversations of your peers, listen to the things that are most authentic and genuine to you, and write about that, because people like to hear your story, your struggles, how you overcame, and things that are in their world. Who's your reader? And my readers are always the people that are most commonly or typically around me. They're typically millennials, driven, have some sense of faith. They're typically people that have reached a lot of success and have further to where they want to go, and really are continuing to search within themselves to figure out how to be even better as they continue to journey on. And so I write books in that lane for that specific age group, that specific demographic. So if you're looking to write, start with that. Start with who's your audience. Start with topics that really mean a lot to you. And then for me, the first few books, I went through the self-publishing route, which is just easy to do. There's so many ways out there to get your book onto sites to sell, or Amazon and things like that. And then for my latter books, I'm not doing the self-publishing route anymore. I'm shopping publishers. And so that's something new for me, but I just know it's time for my brand of business to go from local to global, and I can't do that in the same way anymore. But that's for a whole nother day. So I'm not going to get into that, but just start, and don't be afraid to put your business out there, be vulnerable. Gabby's Guide was a very vulnerable book, told a lot of my business in that book. Now that I'm real grown, I'm like, oh, that kind of told a little too much. But it was a great start. I ended up getting on to Steve Harvey from that book, and just like had a really fabulous run with it. So don't be afraid to do it. And I just felt this tug in my chest, like, you've got to do this. And it actually did change my life. And there are many times when I was kind of like, oh my gosh, I need something that's going to help me make an extra, amount of money this month. And I'd be like, you know what? Let me get in my book bag, and it would get the job done, So that book has been a blessing. And so that's pretty much what I can share about being an author.
No, that's beautiful. You mentioned becoming. I think so much of life, as opposed to figuring out what you need to become, is unbecoming what you're not. And you mentioned, your fiance mentioning like, hey, like, this isn't you. Like, I don't know what's going on. And that was a light bulb for you to kind of continue to navigate that. So that brings me to another question that wasn't written in,
Okay.
messages I sent you. So I apologize again. I'm sure I'll get the backlash later. What parts of you have you now identified weren't who you were? And then what made you become those things as you've navigated your personal and professional life?
Ooh, that's kind of loaded. So I think one of the things that I'm going to start with, like, a negative. I knew that there was a time in my life where I was kind of still navigating, what am I going to do? And I started feeling insecure, and that's not who I am. And so once I realized you're operating in a space that is totally not, you don't even have an insecure bone in your body. Like, what are we doing here? I really took the humble approach and surrounded myself even more with women who are confident, and that I felt would not only push me to be even more confident that I was, but also would help me face the areas in my life that I maybe felt insecure in. And that was so healing for me, to be in a space with women that we're able to support each other in that way. And so it wasn't a solo project coming out of that negative part of myself, that I said, this is another piece of you that's not who you are. You've never been someone like that. Where is this insecurity coming from? And so I love sharing that, because I want to harp on the idea of having community and not trying to do everything by yourself solo, because sometimes they were able to see things about myself that I forgot was there. And it was kind of hurtful to hear it, because they were like, it was like, they're like, we missed that light in you. We missed that part of you. And I felt so sad. Like, am I dimming myself? And so it hurt, but it was so wonderful to have people kind of help me have that accountability. And that's so important. Don't let anything in the world tell you that you don't need other people, because we need each other. And then I guess a more positive thing um, that I found in myself that I needed to kind of augment that would help my career is I learned to be confident in my voice and not need anyone to validate me when I know something is a good idea. And I've
Mm,
had issues in some of the jobs that I've had. And I'm gonna give a specific scenario without telling too much.
I would
But I
love
had a particular job where I remember I said, hey, I have this idea. I know it's going to work. If you do it, the output we're looking for, we're going to reach this margin. We're going to get this number, yada, yada, yada. This is going to happen. I'm telling you, I bet my job on this plan that I have. That's how confident I am in it. And I remember, getting a little bit of pushback. And the person that was over me said to me, I fail at my job a lot. They were like, I fail a lot. They said, and I also don't know everything. So I don't really like that you're coming here telling me that you know for sure this is going to work. And in the nicest way that I could say it, I said, that's you though. That's a you
mm,
thing. I'm confident in what I know. I've been doing this for 10 years. This particular thing that I was working on, I'm like, this is what I do. I'm telling you. And I realized that she was just projecting her insecurities. And when I learned some of the mistakes that she had made in the past, I realized why she was trying to tell me no, because in a way she felt like it would make her look bad, but really if she would have listened, it would have made us look wonderful together. And so that's something that I've learned to do. I don't care who doesn't like it anymore. I don't care if it bothers you. I don't care if it puts me at risk for you not wanting to be me to have a contract with you anymore or whatever. If I know something, I'm not backing down. I did that for too long. So for women, I think that's important, especially in the corporate space, that when you find your voice and you find that perfect happy medium of being strong, but also still very, feminine and just, happy and confident, don't don't let anybody take it away. And so that's kind of my favorite thing that I've come into is like this ability to not shrink anymore. I just love that. And I take the consequences. And people who know my story, they know, I've had some consequences, for not backing down. But I love it about myself now. So
So I think we need to add to your banner. We got author, business, and programming strategist, but we got to add psychic because that's literally where I was going next. You mentioned women, you mentioned community, and it is Black History Month, and I do want to acknowledge the value and the importance of Black women, not just in professional endeavors, but in history. I want you, if you can, to just kind of talk a little bit about any of your experiences as a Black woman professionally, and some advice you might have to some of our current students who might be listening and recent graduates, and any Black women who might be listening. What are some of the things that you've had to navigate, and how do you navigate those things?
Okay, so I want to start with we all stand on the shoulders of someone else. And so sometimes our generation could be a little prideful and think, well, I got the degree, I got the grades, I networked my way to this place, but you don't know the women who've gone before you that were getting punches in the chest and in the gut, metaphorically, and kind of paved the way for you to be where you are. And so always remember that when you go into a space that you are honoring the fight, whether you know fully about it or not. You just really want to honor those who have gone before you, and accept that no, we won't always be perfect. I definitely have not been perfect in every role that I've had. Everybody makes mistakes. I've made many, but one of the things that I think is important is that once you have the realization that as a Black woman, there are many people that had to kick down doors for you to get into the space that you're in today, that you remember to go ahead and continue to pave even more of that way for someone else behind you. And I think it's so important to remember that we are benefiting from many of the wonderful things that those before us have done. And I hope that any place that I've left, and, if I left in a way that wasn't a whirlwind, that whirlwind cleaned up a better spot for someone else who comes in after me. And I just think that's so important to be humble in that way and to really honor that, as a community, it's just so important. I remember being in a space where I was working a certain role and the supervisor was talking about another person in a negative way. And I talked to that supervisor and I said, well, let me talk to them. Before you reprimand them, before you write them up, before you fire them, just let me have a lunch because this person's young, they're a minority, maybe there's some miscommunications, right? And when I had that lunch, we had a wonderful conversation. They ended up having a complete turnaround on the role. And, we were able to smooth things over. But one of the things that I remember is that person coming back to me and saying, thank you for pulling me to the side because you didn't have to. You could have said, well, she's on her own and good luck. You shouldn't have done that. You deserve the consequence. But I was just doing what I would want somebody to do for me. Don't leave me out in the rain to dry. Come tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, sis, I think you could do this a little better. I think you should have said it this way, because I can't do things on my own. I'm only as great as the people around me and the people that I let speak into my life. And so I just don't think that getting to the top is by stepping on the heads of other people, and destroying others to get to some place. I've never been that kind of person. And if that's the way that you think that you're going to get to the top, oh Lord, I'm praying for you.
So I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna go somewhere with it. And this is gonna be my last question, and then we're gonna open it up for
All right.
any of our viewers who are listening to ask some questions. So you mentioned not just having a humble spirit, but essentially identifying the fact that you can't do it on your own, and you'll need the help and assistance of other people in the spaces where someone else doesn't get that, right? And you have to be the negative, for lack of better terms, beneficiary of that sort of, I think we mentioned before, insecurities that they're projecting on you. How do you navigate that? How do you do that in a way that's humble, still show your light through that?
Right.
But essentially not to, we're keeping it real, not to tweak like, yo, who are you to, or,
yeah.
How do you do that?
Excellent question. So the first thing is, I think it's so important, and this is something that's used in mental health. This is something that they tell you, or when someone's about to have a panic attack, or they're about to go into an anxiety fit of some sort. There's this method called the STOP method. And basically what happens is if someone starts feeling the symptoms that they're about to spiral to a place, literally out of your mouth, yell stop to yourself. You can go in the bathroom and yell it in the mirror. You could be driving and all of a sudden say stop. And what it does is it literally creates a break in the brain neurons doing what they're about to do to spiral so that you have a chance to redirect yourself somewhere else. And I'd say that as a life lesson, that when you see a situation that's negative, go ahead and give yourself a stop before you say the wrong thing, email the wrong thing, gossip to the wrong person, and think about it. What do I need to do in this situation? And for me, it was often venting to the appropriate person outside of that space so that I have a place to be really real about what's going on, and then seeking wise counsel on how to handle it so that I do handle it in the most professional way. And then the last thing, I'm a really big advocate of positive self-talk or redirecting your inner voice to be speaking positive to you. So when someone's in a workspace diminishing your work, diminishing who you are, diminishing your talent, do not take it, digest it, and make it your own. I have this saying that I got from somewhere. This is not my own. I got it from somewhere. But birds, they'll fly over your head, right? And that's like negative thoughts. They fly around your head. It's up to you to make sure they don't make a nest. And so that's the same thing when people are talking crazy to you and being negative. The thought can fly. Okay, this person said this. Am I really that way? Do I need to do better? If you realize they're lying, it's not going to build a nest. I'm not going to go through life walking with my head down because someone said I'm not a good person or I don't know how to do my job. So I think that's so important to get in the car when you leave that workspace and say, actually, I am the best person that they ever hired for this job. I don't even care if I'm still learning. You got the best personality for this job. Or, I'll get in the car and say to myself, you know what? I'm here for a reason. No one can tell me that I'm not in this place. Matter of fact, I would tell myself, like, my destiny is in no one's hands but me and God. Like, you have no power over whether I'm successful or not. And that really helped me to not internalize it too much, because we all can, we all can walk away from an experience and say, that really tore me down, and it could take some time to build yourself back up. But if you promise not to ingest it and internalize it, then you can do a lot quicker of a turnaround in your psyche, so that you don't accept that when someone's speaking less than to you, so you don't accept that you actually are less than. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it did. And I already took a note right here. So birds can fly around your head, but it's up to you whether or not they nest. I'm still right. You said it wasn't yours, but I don't know whose it is. Right now. Okay, so we have a couple questions from the audience, and the first question that we do have is, throughout your professional journey, what is something that you would change? And I know that's a loaded question, and I know it's cliche, and I know your answer might be, I wouldn't change anything because it made me who I am. But if you can, identify some things that maybe you would do a little differently.
I just have one. So for me, whenever I've taken a role, when I know I'm supposed to be there, there's a feeling of I belong, even if it's for a short time. For me, I'll get a sentiment of I'm supposed to be here. Anytime I had a feeling in my gut, maybe I shouldn't be in this space, every time I got that feeling, I was right. And so if there was one thing that I would change, is to go with my gut, to not be afraid to let other people down for the choice that I make, and go with my gut. So my suggestion is, if someone's saying, but this is the best opportunity, you should probably take it. Do you know how much money? I've heard that before. Like, do you see the salary they're offering you? And then I would take the job, and it would be the worst thing I've ever done. So that's my suggestion for you all, is really don't be afraid to make your own choices. And if it's a mistake, so what? It's yours. You get to own it. And if it ends up being the best choice of your life, great. You made that decision for yourself.
That's beautiful. Yeah, it's something that this is I made up. So, I trademark it, so y'all don't say it. But, you can't spell life without an L in the first place. Letters, it's IF, that spells if. If you can acknowledge that L is just the beginning, you get to the E, that's the exit at the end. So back to what Gabby was saying about, if it doesn't work out or if it's a mistake, so be it, because those things allow you to navigate life, right? Ultimately, if you're at a divergent path and there's two different paths, the difference between one person and the other is one person is going to sit there and wait until there's a sign from whichever path to say, okay, that's the way I need to go. But you'll be waiting forever if you're waiting on that. Someone else says, okay, well, any, meeny, miny, I'm going to go this way. If that wasn't the right way, when I come back center, now I know that's where I need to be. So there's value in having different experiences to actually figure those things out.
Yeah.
And then the final question I have is, as we're having conversations about you having epiphanies, understanding, this is where I am, having self-awareness, self-worth, everyone experiences lows in those processes. Everyone experiences, and everyone experiences, no matter what your beliefs are, where you don't have that same amount of faith. Talking through how you can keep the faith, or how you have kept the faith when things weren't going as planned.
It's an excellent question. And I'm glad that this is our last question, because I do want to leave this on people's mind. So something that's so important as a woman of faith, and I shared earlier, I do work in ministry as well. I have a Master of Divinity, so I spend a lot of time thinking about existential crisis and spiritual things. And when life is hard, sometimes all the cliches you don't want to hear. When you're in a difficult space and you feel that low, sometimes the normal things that made you feel better don't work. And one of the best things that I've ever done in my life is that when I'm in a place where I'm feeling really low, I give myself a time limit to stay there. If I need 24 hours, it's 24 hours. If I can do, get over the low feeling in 2, great. If I need 7 full days, I give myself that. But I cannot stay in that low place longer than the time frame that I give myself. So that means if I need to grieve something, cry about it, be angry about it, that window is all I got, because after that, we got to get up and keep going. And that's what all winners do, is that you don't stay in the low place. You allow yourself to feel your feelings, get it out, and move forward. And one more thing I want to add to that, something that's been so important for me to keeping my faith in low moments, and keeping strong in that faith when I don't feel as confident, is making sure that, just like if someone's sick, right? And if you're sick, you need to eat your soup, have your vitamin C, drink more water, have your Gatorade, all the things the doctors say is healthy to do. When we're low, why don't we feed our spirit the things that heal us, that make us feel better, that bring us back to life? So a rule that I have for myself, if I'm in that low place, I'm not doing the things that will make me feel lower. I'm not going to talk to people that are going to say, hey, I'm going to be low with you and keep you low. They say misery loves company. I'm going to make sure that I'm feeding my soul the things that bring me back to life. And so if that's making sure that for me, I'm not putting this on anyone else, but for me, reading more of my Bible, reading more of my Bible, praying more, surrounding myself with my church family more, then that's what I'm going to do. And outside of those spiritual things, making sure that I'm putting on repeat inspirational shows. I go and watch interviews of all the people who had successful lives, who went through hard things. I'm watching inspirational movies. I'm listening to podcasts nonstop around the clock. Because something that I found, that if your brain is hearing all those things, you can't stay low for long. And so sometimes I'll be watching a movie and I'll just be boohooing, crying, because I'll be like, I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna get out of this place. I'm gonna be better. You see what he went through in Pursuit of Happiness? He was in the bathroom floor. Look at him now, he's a millionaire. So that's what I want you to do if you're in a low place. Just like if you were sick and recovering, do the same thing for your spirit and your mind. Surround yourself with people and things that fulfill you and give you that fire again. And I promise you'll get your faith back. So that's what I want to say. And I also want to say thank you all so much for having me. This was awesome. Thank you to Joe. And for everybody who listened, I don't want to, get off the screen without saying thank you.
Man, you got me ready to run through a wall. I'm just like, I can do it. All right, look, man, Gabby. So before I forget, I just want to give you the opportunity one more time to tell people how they can connect with you,
Sure.
Your website, your IG. So how can they get connected with you?
Sure. Instagram, Gabby Simone _B. My website, GabrielleSimoneB.com. If you are looking for any mental health mental health assistance, you can go to mentalwellnessforyou.org. And those are the ways that you can contact me. And please contact me.
Do it, because we're going to see if you guys follow up. And Gabby, we're definitely going to do this again. I can go ahead and say now, we'll definitely do this again, because there was so much we were able to learn and talk about. And I know there's so much more insights you have on a lot of these things. If you haven't already, make sure you follow Georgia State Alumni Association. So that's Georgia State Alumni, and then also the Young Alumni Council, the Young Professional Auxiliary of the Alumni Association. That's GSU_YAC on Instagram. We will follow back, unless you're talking crazy, then we can't. But I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. I want to also give a shout out to Adonis Hill. You don't see him. He's controlling all the banners you see. He's on top of it. I want to congratulate him on his role. He's doing a great job. And I want to thank all of you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.
See ya.